So hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about jump statements in Python. Now jump statements are very important because at certain times we want to break out of a conditional statement or a loop. So in that scenario, precisely loop, in that scenario break and continue comes into existence, right? So on the block page it's written about a bit of definition that it jumps out of the normal execution. So we have two jump statement. One is break and another is continue. Now we'll jump over to our Jupyter notebook to see them in action, right? So first we'll talk about break. So imagine I have a for loop for I in so we are already familiar with for loop, we have discussed it. So suppose 10, yeah, no problem, and I'll just print the value of I. So as we know, the value of I will start from 0 all the way up to 9, right? So we can see it starts from all the way up to 9. Now imagine I want to break out of the loop when I reach 5, right? I don't want to continue these remaining numbers, right? So this functionality can be attained using a break statement. So I'll put a condition. If I is equal to 5, right? Then what I'll do, I'll just simply break. So that is what it does. So if I run it, so we can see after 5, everything else has been break. Now imagine if I don't put if statement in here, what will happen then? I'll just move the space and I'll not put an indent because it's on the same level as the loop, and I'll run it. So all we can see, it just prints 0, and it is obvious, right? Because the for loop starts, the initial value of I is 0, then we are going to print 0, and then break statement is encountered and we will jump out of the for loop. So that is how it behaves. We can put a conditional and then we can put a break inside. That also works, right? So does it make sense? Again, in its simplest form, whenever a break statement is encountered by a Python execution, then the execution will jump out of that particular block, right? Does it make sense? Okay. So now next we are going to jump into our continue statement, right? So a small program is also given in here. So we have used break. So try and go through it, try and go through the blog post, and I guess the program should make sense. So the program was to find first 4 odd numbers between 1 and 10 to 20, right? So the next statement that we are going to talk about is continue. Now continue behaves in a similar way, but we'll see the difference, right? So for, I'll write the similar code, I in range 10, right? And then we are going to print I, right? So if I execute it, as usual, we are going to get numbers from 0 to 9. Now if I modify it, so if similar behavior that we did in break statement also, if I is equal to 5, right? In that statement, we'll hit continue. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to move this thing, because else we are not going to see the difference in its behavior. We are going to put print later on. So I guess there is something wrong because I have a red print. Yeah. Now because of the indent mismatch, we have to be very much careful about indent mismatch, right? So if I now execute it, let's see what happens. A similar behavior, but you see 5 is missing, right? Between 4 and 6, 5 is missing. Why is it like that? Now what continue actually does, whenever it encounters this particular condition, that is I is equal to 5 is true, then it will continue. That means all the statements that are underneath continue will not be executed and the sequence will jump back, right? And the iteration will jump back to the beginning condition. So that's why we are not having 5. This because this print doesn't get print statement doesn't get executed when continue gets executed, right? So does it make sense? Continue helps us to jump to the next iteration, right? To the next iteration of the loop. I guess it makes sense. Now again, the difference, break statement will break out of the loop. It's not going to do anything, but continue will jump to the next iteration. So we were in the 4th iteration, right? So then when we encounter this 5 didn't get executed and it jumped over all the way to 6, right? So whatever the statement is underneath the continue statement will not get executed. That's an idea, basic idea. And in case of break, it will break out of the for loop. That's the difference between break and continue statement. So they are useful at certain times whenever we want to implement some sort of logic. Now here is a program to find all the odd numbers between 10 and 20, right? So this program has been done using a continue statement. Now what we are doing, we are just going to check whether the number is divisible by 2 or not. If it is divisible by 2, that means it's an even number and I don't want it. So the continue will execute and print statement will not execute and will jump upon some sort of logic. Now here is a program to find all the odd numbers between 10 and 20, right? So this program has been done using a continue statement. Now what we are doing, we are just going to check whether the number is divisible by 2 or not. If it is divisible by 2, that means it's an even number and I don't want it. So the continue will execute and print statement will not execute and will jump upon x. But if it is not divisible, that means it's an odd number. The continue statement will not be encountered because it is inside an if statement, and our print statement will execute. That means only the odd numbers gets executed, right? So I guess that's it for break and continue.